technology, nanobiotechnology center that they have set up, that Deacon's University. Now we can see Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Turnbull along with, I think, the priest of the Akshardham temple coming into the Akshardham temple. The priest briefing Prime Minister Turnbull on the relevance of this temple, this architectural marvel built right on the banks of Yamuna River in East Delhi, has been modeled on the original Akshardham temple, which is in Gujarat. But it's quite a beautiful sight to see the temple itself. And the weather in Delhi, surprisingly for this part of the year, is pleasant. I mean, it's afternoon. Delhi generally it's almost 6:30 in the afternoon. 4:30 in the afternoon in Delhi, and Delhi generally can be really warm. But today it's pleasant and breezy, and so you can see the Prime Minister Turnbull and Prime Minister Modi take a leisurely walk right up to this architectural marvel that is Akshardham Temple of New Delhi.
All right, so here we have a monk of Swami Narayan Sampradaya explaining and acquainting the Australian Prime Minister with the Akshardham temple there, the architectural marvel which we have in East Delhi. Now we have the felicitation of the visiting dignitaries there by the monk at Akshardham temple. Just a while back we saw both the leaders travel through Delhi Metro. They started from Monday House Metro Station and they travelled all the way to Akshardham temple in a metro which indeed took the commuters there by surprise. And we had what is to be noticed was the camaraderie between both the leaders. We had the Australian Prime Minister click selfies with the Indian Prime Minister there, and we also saw the overwhelming response of the commuters there, and how even the commuters there tried to take a selfie and waved, chanted Modi Modi, and a roaring welcome was seen at the Monday House Metro Station. Also, we have now both of them move towards the inside of Akshardham temple. We have the temple carved with flora, fauna, dancers, musicians and deities. Akshardham temple here, it was officially opened in November 2005 and it sits near the banks of Yamuna. Both the leaders there being photographed by the media accompanying them. Also we have the temple adjacent to the 2010 Commonwealth Games Village, that's in East Delhi. Amrit is joining us to get us more on that. Amrit, we have both the leaders there getting acquainted by the monk there at Akshardham temple.
Yes. The two leaders standing at the foot of the temple, at the foot of the stairs that lead up to the temple. This priest is from the Swami Narayan sect. He greeted Prime Minister Turnbull and Prime Minister Modi by garlanding them with a floral garland, and then he tied a sacred thread around the wrists of Prime Minister Turnbull. As he walks with him, he briefs him about the temple. And the Swami Narayan sect is a sect which runs temples all over the country. In fact, they run major temples in major cities of Australia like Sydney, Melbourne, Queensland, province. So Prime Minister Turnbull would be well acquainted with the Swami Narayan sect, and the priest walking with him now. The two leaders along with the priest climbing up the stairs and appreciating the architectural marvel that Akshardham temple is, which is modeled on the lines of the original. Now you can see this full frame of the Akshardham temple. What a beautiful sight. I'm sure Prime Minister Turnbull on a pleasant afternoon would be enjoying it. He actually taking or removing his shoes which is a practice when you enter temples in India. So Prime Minister Turnbull, I'm sure it will be quite a cultural experience for him. And, the smooth transition, and this is the wonder that India is, the high-tech trains, the aspirations of being a developed nation, fast on the road of development, right now into the heart of culture and the ancient civilization that India is. I'm sure Prime Minister Turnbull is enjoying the cultural experience after a hectic day that he put on tough negotiations that happened during the talks in the first part of the day at the Hyderabad House, here heading the two delegations, one, of course, by Prime Minister Modi, the Indian side, and the Australian side, led by Prime Minister Turnbull.
Right, so Amrit, here we have the monk acquainting the visiting dignitaries with the architecture of the Akshardham temple. The word Akshardham in itself means the abode of Brahma, who's the creator and is believed by followers as a home of God on earth. So here we have the monk acquainting the two dignitaries. Now, Amrit, you've been covering MEA, and the effort of the Prime Minister to put India on the global page is indeed applaudable, because we've seen wherever he goes, whichever nation he's visited, there is this sense of Indianness which he has taken with him, and that is what is perhaps attracting the rest of the world towards here, isn't it?
Oh, yes, of course. Who better than the Prime Minister as a cultural ambassador of the old and the great civilization that India is, which is, as I've been saying throughout the afternoon, that, this marvel that India is, a modern India, yet one which retains its cultural heritage, its cultural history, and the Prime Minister has been using this to the hills to project it around the world wherever he travels. The soft power that India has. India has a big diaspora around the world, including in Australia. So that is a great leverage that we have, and the Prime Minister has understood that this can be used to project India, the aspirations, the dreams of India. It's not just the Bollywood movies. Of course, they are an integral part of it, but the students from small towns, from middle class with aspirational values, actually wanting to go to universities abroad, to the best universities of the world, many of which exist in Australia. There are 60,000 Indian students currently studying there, though the number dipped in the past few years because of the spate of racial attacks on Indians, and that is what India did bring up with Prime Minister Turnbull during the meeting with him today. And Australia assured India that it's doing all it can and would not allow that. So trying to repost trust and rebuild trust in the Indian student community. It is, of course, a business opportunity for Australia, but for India would want its diaspora to go out and be a cultural ambassador, and the world is well acquainted with what India today is. Long gone are the days when India was a land of snake charmers and elephants. Now India has the Japanese metros running, the world coming, wanting to collaborate with you, have nuclear collaborations with you. You're a nuclear power. You're a responsible power. You're the biggest democracy of the world. You have a huge diaspora with the kind of growth story that you are. So you combine the best of both worlds, and that is what today Prime Minister Turnbull has been experiencing. And I'm sure when he landed, since he landed last evening in Delhi, because this is his first visit to India, he would be experiencing it firsthand, and seeing that when he goes down to Mumbai, there'll be hard-nosed business negotiations with companies, and here there is a cultural experience where he actually ambles into the Akshardham temple, sits in the metro, people excited, enthused, on the commuters on the platforms rushing up to take a selfie with him through the window panes of the metro. He clicking a selfie with Prime Minister Modi in the metro. So these are the two faces of India that he sees today, and that is the image and the soft power that Prime Minister Modi, since he's become Prime Minister, has tried to project around the world wherever he's gone.
Yes, Amrit. So we were talking of how a prized afternoon is it for the visiting dignitary there. We've had him have important bilateral talks with the Indian Prime Minister, and then we saw him take a ride in the metro to Akshardham Temple, and here he's being acquainted with the marvels there at the Akshardham Temple. We have a hall of values there, we have a theatre, we have a boat ride at the Akshardham Temple. Also, we have a musical foundation and a Garden of India there, architectural marvel there is. It is indeed. But then, Amrit, talk at length about the contribution of the Indian diaspora in Australia. We also have a distinct and a large educational delegation which is accompanying the Australian Prime Minister on his visit to India. Let us know more about that and how education could be a sector for both the countries to enhance the relationship further.
Yes, of course. But let me first tell you that right now what you see on your screens, the Prime Minister, the two Prime Ministers inside the Central Hall of Akshardham, where he could see the life story of the founder of the Akshardham Temple, great architecture, the priest of the Swaminarayan sect telling the Australian Prime Minister about the architecture, about the relevance of this temple, and I'm sure it must be quite a cultural experience when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan had gone down to the ghats of Banaras and saw that Aarti happening in the evening on the banks. That was a great cultural experience. I was there. I can tell you I could see the pleasant surprise on the face of Prime Minister President Ashraf Ghani when he was taken to the Golden Temple in Amritsar. So the Prime Minister, it's become a trademark of the Prime Minister to not just have business negotiations with the incoming leaders or wherever he goes when he meets them, but also have strategic and national level negotiations and discussions with them during the talks with them. But he makes it a point to take them through cultural experience, and I'm sure that's going to stay with Prime Minister Turnbull for a very, very long time. And this is the exact kind of personal rapport and chemistry that builds up between the leaders, that helps them cooperate and give a push to the bilateral relationship that exists and take it further. Clearly now you can see the priest of the Swaminarayan sect explaining to Prime Minister Turnbull about the Akshardham Temple.
Right, Amrit, we've talked of terrorism, we've talked of education. What were the other important areas which both the leaders talked of in the afternoon?
Because we have lack of time.
Preeti, could you please repeat?
Yes, we've seen both the leaders take up terror. We've talked about terror. We've talked about education, the contribution of the Indian diaspora. Also, let us know more about the issues, other issues which were taken up by both the leaders during their bilateral talks.
It was a whole gamut of relationship, as I said earlier, from clean energy to science and technology to higher education, cooperation and skills development. Both the Prime Minister reiterated that how India has an ambitious target of training about 400 million Indian nationals by 2022 in high-value skills, and how India and Australia could cooperate in they were heads of vocational institutions and the vice chancellors and chancellors of the top 6 research universities of Australia accompanying Prime Minister Turnbull. There were discussions that happened, agreements between individual institutions and universities that happened. The two Prime Ministers, of course, inaugurated the Terry Deakin University Centre for Nanotechnology remotely. The centre is at Gurugram. So, the whole range of these issues were discussed, and energy needs, the very significantly, Prime Minister Turnbull said that the first lot of the uranium that Australia had promised under the civil nuclear deal that India and Australia inked after much negotiation is to arrive shortly in India. So actualizing and implementing that deal on the ground. So,
and we have both the leaders here chatting and getting clicked by the media which is accompanying them. Both the leaders at Akshardham Temple. Earlier we saw them take a ride to Akshardham Temple through Delhi Metro, Mandi House Metro Station in the national capital. And here we have the Prime Minister sharing his thoughts with the visiting dignitary and the Australian Prime Minister interacting with the Indian Prime Minister. Akshardham Temple is where both the dignitaries are at present, and we have a change of weather there also. A sunny afternoon has given way to a breezy, nice afternoon there. Both the leaders being clicked by the media persons there who are accompanying them. This is the first visit of the Australian Prime Minister to India, and he's on a 4-day state visit. Earlier in the day, we saw him talk. Yes,
pretty well. To be, sitting on the stairs of Akshardham Temple in this breezy late afternoon, and look at the visual behind you. I'm sure for Prime Minister Turnbull, it would be quite a cultural experience. We can see the bonhomie clearly reflecting on the face of both the premiers. So after taking this round, while Prime Minister Turnbull prepares to leave the Akshardham Temple, I'm sure for the rest of his stay in India, and when he goes back, this is going to stay with him for a very, very long time. So, and as I was saying, that it would be quite a ride for Prime Minister Turnbull, both literally and figuratively, when he goes down to Mumbai and sees hard business negotiations happen between his business delegation and the industry and trade representatives that he meets, and the corporate honchos that he meets in Mumbai. And the negotiations that happened at the government-to-government level and the delegation level talks today to this whole experience of just hopping on to the metro at Mandi House Station, going up to Akshardham, getting off there, walking down to the Akshardham Temple, taking off shoes, walking up the stairs, going through the whole cultural experience of understanding the history, the relevance of the Akshardham Temple, chatting with Prime Minister, the priest.
All right, Amrit, I would want you to interrupt. I would want to interrupt you here. So after the Delhi Metro, here we have both the leaders board an e-rickshaw there, another very important part of transportation in the national capital. I'm sure the Australian Prime Minister has had the best of the Delhi culture all in a day today itself.
Oh yes, I mean this golf cart, which is battery operated, is also symbolic of the clean energy aspirations and the climate change that the world seeks, and India being a key player in it. And today, Australia joining the International Solar Alliance, in which of which Prime Minister Modi was a key architect, and he put his whole political weight behind it to make it a success. And Prime Minister Turnbull actually saying that he was convinced by India's efforts to join the Solar Alliance. So in that sense, this battery-operated golf cart, or e-rickshaw as you call it, is symbolic of where the world wants to get, and the aspirations that India has, and how India and Australia a little while back, reiterating that they are committed to the goals of climate change, bringing in renewable technology transfer from Australia to India, cooperating in biofuels, research to actual implementation. So clearly, this golf cart ride of a battery-operated golf cart around the Akshardham Temple is symbolic in that way as well.
Yes, Amrit, we are talking of the camaraderie, the bond, Homi here, and this is to be seen. This has been witnessed on earlier occasions as well. When Prime Minister visited other countries, we've had other world leaders visit here. We've seen them. You know, the way the Australian Prime Minister today took selfies, and then he tried to understand the Indian culture there. We've seen other world leaders also understand the Indian culture, and efforts by the Prime Minister also there to see the other cultures and acquaint himself with the other cultures when he goes abroad. So this is a new way of soft power diplomacy between the world leaders, and that indeed adds new dimensions to the relationships between the nations, isn't it?
You know, one thing Prime Minister Modi has done since he's come to power and become Prime Minister is use this soft power diplomacy to the hilt to project and propagate the Indian interests. You know, India has had an image of being, you know, the best IT professionals, wanting to be an IT superpower, Hyderabad, Bangalore being the hardcore IT centers, where world, firms like Google to Microsoft wanting to come down, Indian-owned firms like, you know, Infosys or TCS doing cutting-edge research and providing solutions. So, but there is another power to India that you see on your screens right now, and that is what Prime Minister Modi has been able to harness very, very successfully and propagate it to the world and use the diaspora, because that connects very well with the diaspora. So use that, use our diaspora effectively to propagate our interests. Today, say for example, the Indian High Commissioner, the Australian High Commissioner to India, Harinder Sidhu, is a third generation Indian Australian who comes from Punjab. I was speaking to her a little while back at the Hyderabad house and chased Punjabi. Now, you know, the world is waking up to that power of India. Look at the kind of, you know, ambassadors they are posting to India, and it helps in, you know, building linkages, helps in putting a trust to the foundation of the relationship, and thus cementing the ties further. And that is what this Prime Minister has been able to exploit to the hilt and use it to the hilt to propagate soft power diplomacy, using soft power diplomacy, promoting and propagating the interests of the country.
Yes, indeed. This is the trust which further cements the relationship between the nations, and we see the leaders there when they make a shift from the earlier followed a VVIP culture, and this is what is indeed very welcoming between the two leaders there. Here we see both the leaders just a while back and are at present taking a ride in the battery-operated rickshaw there, and we see both the leaders there at Akshardham Temple. A while back we saw them start from Mandi House metro station, and they then proceeded towards Akshardham Temple. The monk there acquainted both the dignitaries with the marvels of the temple there. We saw them take detailed look at the central dome of the Akshardham Temple, which in itself is a marvel. And from here they will next head on for a boat ride, which indeed is another very important aspect of the Akshardham Temple. We have the famed Akshardham Temple there. We have the Neelkant Darshan, that is the theatre there. We have a Hall of Values, the boat ride, and we also have a musical fountain. The Garden of India there is also at Akshardham Temple, and it is set near the banks of Yamuna, and it is also very close to the 2010 Commonwealth Games village there. So in all, the Australian Prime Minister, after having a very eventful day, when we talk of the bilateral talks between the two leaders, now the Australian dignitary taking a look at the Indian culture and the marvels of the national capital. Earlier we saw him take the metro ride, and he, I'm sure, must be very overwhelmed by the response which he and the Indian Prime Minister got at the metro stations and while they were travelling through the Delhi metro to Akshardham Temple there. And then we also saw him take selfies with the Indian Prime Minister, and both of them headed towards Akshardham Temple. The Australian Prime Minister there tried to gauge and understand the Indian culture there. The monk very patiently and very nicely explained and acquainted the Australian Prime Minister with the highlights and the marvels of the Akshardham temple, and both the leaders there at Akshardham temple in the national capital. The Australian Prime Minister is on his first visit to India. Earlier we've seen both the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister meet each other on the sidelines of the G20 summit in 2015 and 16, but this is for the first time that both of them are having a one-on-one meeting. 6 MOUs were signed in the morning, in the afternoon in fact, when both of them had bilateral talks, and now we saw the Australian Prime Minister experience a cultural extravaganza at the Akshardham temple in the national capital. These are the visuals we're getting for you from the national capital, Akshardham temple. Both the leaders at the temple traveling through a battery-operated rickshaw there and grasping and appreciating the architectural delight the Akshardham temple is. The Akshardham, or the Swaminarayan Akshardham complex, is a temple there and a spiritual cultural campus in New Delhi. It displays traditional Hindu and Indian culture, spirituality and architecture. We saw the monk acquaint the Australian Prime Minister with the importance and the highlights of the Akshardham temple. And as I told you earlier that we have a boat ride also here. Now this boat ride is where the Indian Prime Minister and Australian Prime Minister are headed towards, and earlier we saw them examine and understand and acquaint themselves with the Hall of Values there, wherein they witnessed the central dome, the architectural marvel it is. And also up next we have the boat ride here. Both of the leaders are headed towards this boat ride. The monk there and the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister offering prayers and obeisance to the deity there at Akshardham temple. For our viewers who joined us late, we have the Australian Prime Minister along with the Indian Prime Minister at the Akshardham temple. Earlier in the day we saw them have bilateral talks, and after that we saw the Indian Prime Minister accompany the Australian Prime Minister for a metro ride through Delhi Metro to Akshardham temple. They started from Mandi House metro station, and here we have the monk who right from the beginning is acquainting the Australian dignitary with the highlights and the importance which is engraved in the Akshardham temple there. What is to be noticed is the interest which has been shown by the Australian Prime Minister uninterrupted. Very nicely he has been acquainting himself with what all the monk is saying, and we have here the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister pay obeisance to the deity at the Akshardham temple. From here on they will head on for a boat ride, and also we have a theatre in the Akshardham temple itself, Hall of Values, and the Prime Minister they are greeted by the monks of Akshardham temple there.
Now, you go to the Prime Minister, we'll be going 10,000 years back to the Philippines.
All right, so just a while back we saw the ambience of serenity and peace at the Akshardham temple, and how the two leaders there paid obeisance to the deities at the Akshardham temple. We have the Indian Prime Minister accompany the Australian Prime Minister for a cultural rendezvous at the Akshardham temple in the national capital. A rich experience for the Australian Prime Minister. I'm sure he will have beautiful memories from this visit. He is being apprised, he's being acquainted with the culture of Hinduism at the Akshardham temple. We had a monk explain each and every minute detail to the Australian and the Indian Prime Ministers there who have come here for a visit at the Akshardham temple. Earlier we saw them take a ride through Delhi Metro. They started from Mandi House Metro Station and they travelled by a metro to Akshardham temple. And in a short while from now, we see them at present also take the ride in this battery-operated rickshaw all through the Akshardham temple. It is not just a small temple there. Indeed, it is a huge complex that is symbolic of the culture of Hinduism, spirituality, culture and architecture. A marvel it is in itself. Astounding it is to know that it attracts as much as 70% of the tourists who visit Delhi, and it was indeed opened officially in 2005 by former President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Amrit Pal is joining us again to get more. Amrit, we saw the Australian Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister pay obeisance to the deities there, and now they are taking a round through the Akshardham complex on a battery-operated rickshaw. Let us know more about the visit here, and also I'm sure indeed this would be etched in the memory of the visiting dignitary for a long, long time, isn't it?
The Prime Minister Prime Minister Turnbull, accompanied by Prime Minister Modi, going through the Swaminarayan Akshardham complex. It is, as you know, modelled on the original Akshardham temple of Gandhinagar. It rises about 43 meter high, spans about 96 meters wide, extends 356 feet long, and is intricately carved with flora, fauna, dancers, musicians, deities. And today when Prime Minister Turnbull was taken around the temple, he saw all the architecture there, the Maharishi Vastu architecture on which this temple has been built, and which is a blend of architectural styles from across India in its glory, constructed entirely from Rajasthani pink sandstone and the Italian Carrara marble. It is based on traditional Hindu architectural guidelines, or the Shilpa Shastras, on the maximum temple lifespan, and it uses no metal, no steel or concrete. So clearly, for Prime Minister Turnbull, it would have been quite an experience to see this architectural marvel that is, which consists of about 234 ornately carved pillars, 9 domes, 20,000 murtis of sadhus, devotees, acharyas, the Gajendra Peeth, where he went, a plinth paying tribute to the elephant, for its importance in the Hindu culture. And now the two premiers are heading for the boat ride, which is an important part of the visit to this temple in what is called as Sanskruti Vihar. It's about a 15-minute journey through the 10,000 years of glorious heritage, and which uses life-size figures and robotics to depict life in Vedic India. This is what Prime Minister Turnbull would be experiencing on this boat ride, and that's why it's really important when you visit the Akshardham temple. This boat ride is an integral part of going through the whole experience of the culture that Akshardham temple is built to take the devotee or the person who visits the temple through. So this is what Prime Minister Turnbull, accompanied by Prime Minister Modi, would be experiencing. And very interestingly, it shows the contributions of Vedic Indians to various fields such as science, astronomy, arts, literature, yoga, mathematics, etc. And, by eminent persons like mathematician astronomers Aryabhat and Brahmagupta, Gramirin Panini, contributors to ancient art and science of Ayurveda. So, this is going to be a great cultural experience, not just a visit to a temple that Prime Minister Turnbull is going to undertake. And I'm sure this is going to stay with Prime Minister Turnbull for a very, very long time. As I was telling you a little while back, when Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, came to India, I was there at Hyderabad House when the negotiations happened, when the talks happened. They happened in a very formal atmosphere. And later, when he went down to Benares or Varanasi for the Ganga Aarti, he was completely overwhelmed. The same I could see with President Ashraf Ghani taking a round of the Sanctum Sanctorum of Darbar Sahib or Golden Temple at Amritsar. The same I could experience when Xi Jinping of China walked along the banks of the Sabarmati River along with Prime Minister Modi. Remember that famous visual where both leaders sat on a swing on the banks of Sabarmati River and then walk across the Sabarmati River to the Sabarmati ashram of Mahatma Gandhi. So this is what, this is actually utilizing the soft power of India, the values that India represents, and use it to propagate the interests of modern-day India.
Right, Amrit, we were talking of how both the nations have talked of taking the bilateral relationship to the next level, and here we have both the leaders take a boat ride at the Akshardham temple. You've given us, in a nutshell, the significance of the boat ride and what all it means. Let us now also talk about how important and crucial are the two nations to each other. We've seen that Malcolm Turnbull's visit is the first to India, is his first visit to India, and also he has talked of taking the relationship to the next level, and here we have the boat which will take both the leaders for a boat ride through the 10,000 glorious heritage, 10,000 years of glorious heritage. Here we have life-size figures and robotics which depict life in Vedic India, and we also talk of the contributions of the Vedic Indians to the fields such as science, astronomy, arts, literature, yoga, and other fields as well. So in this 15-minute boat ride, I'm sure the Australian Prime Minister, the visiting dignitary there, will have the best of the Indian culture. And we saw him also take a ride through Delhi Metro in the afternoon to reach Akshardham Temple. And I'm sure, Amrit, in just a span of half a day, the Australian Prime Minister has had the best of the Indian culture and the best of the national capital, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It must have been quite an experience. And, very interestingly, when Prime Minister Turnbull takes this boat ride, a part of the boat ride shows the world's first university, Takshila. and the subjects taught there. And today, in Hyderabad House, when the two prime ministers were leading the delegation level talks, they were vice chancellors and chancellors of the top six research universities of the world, talking about how the two nations can cooperate in fields like nanotechnology, biofuels, and today, when he takes this boat ride and goes to that part where it depicts the first university of the world, Takshila, the subject talks there, it will be actually not just an experience from the morning that Prime Minister Turnbull woke up to the time he goes to bed. It will actually figuratively be a ride from the Middle Ages to modernity, from what ancient India used to be, what India went through in the Middle Ages, what the modern India today depicts, right with its metros, right with its aspirations of using uranium, of using clean energy, being a responsible part of the world, and yet using cutting-edge technology, giving the best of education to its children, to its citizens, so that the modern India of tomorrow can be built on the foundations of that. So in that sense, this whole ride in itself, as we can see, the two premiers taking that ride accompanied by the priest of the Akshardham temple, this is what, this whole breadth of feelings and emotions that Prime Minister Turnbull would be going through.
Yes, Amrit, and here we see both the leaders begin with their boat ride at Akshardham temple. It is a 15-minute journey through this 10,000 years of glorious heritage, and it is using life-size figures, and we see the Australian Prime Minister there very curiously catching each and every image, each and every figure that comes his way, and we have the priest there acquainting him with what all the Vedic India was, and this has been depicted.
Not just Vedic India, Priti.
Yes.
Vedic India, Middle India, Sufi India,
Yes.
The India of mystics, India of mathematicians. This 15-minute journey is a journey through 10,000 years of glorious heritage that this country has. So, from the modernity of a metro train jumping down to this boat ride and going through 10,000 years of history, and which shows the contribution of Vedic Indians to various fields. Science, astronomy, arts, literature, yoga, mathematics. Many of these fields were what these people were talking, these two premiers and their delegations were talking at Hyderabad House. How the universities of modern Australia and modern India how they can collaborate to promote progress in these particular fields. So when Prime Minister Turnbull is being taken through this boat ride, through these life-size images, he realizes that here is a great civilization which is a great growth story in present times, with a glorious past that he's collaborating with. I'm sure it will leave a deep impact on him, which will stay with him for a very long time and help in cementing the ties, which, it's actually going a little beyond the formal negotiations and the formal talks that the premiers of the countries have. And this small little push goes a long way in establishing that a repo that can give that much needed push to the relationship, Priti.
Yes, a beautiful extravaganza there, a rendezvous for the Australian Prime Minister. 10,000 years of glorious Indian history in just 15 minutes, and that too on a boat ride, accompanied with a monk who is acquainting each and every life-size figure that comes on the way. Now we have this indeed could be etched in his memories, the memories of the visiting dignitary for long. Amrit, we also saw both the leaders take a ride across the Akshardham complex on a battery-operated golf cart. Now also we saw how the Australian Prime Minister said that Australia could also join the Solar Alliance soon. Let us know more about that as well.
Oh, yes, I mean, Solar Alliance was a part of, Prime Minister Modi's, the International Solar Alliance was a part of Prime Minister Modi's initiative when he returned from France after the climate change talks there, and the ambitious agenda that the world has for climate change, and how the Prime Minister living up to his commitment of the developing countries, and especially India, will play a responsible role in reducing the carbon footprint. And the bilateral pact signed and the talks that happened with Australia, especially on climate change, did focus around and did the purpose was to achieve to reduce the carbon footprint. The commitment that India has made to itself and to the world, and the symbolism of the battery-operated rickshaw. Though I don't know if that was done by design, because inside the complex, I'm told, battery-operated rickshaws operate. People generally go around and do the circumambulation on foot, but because it's quite big and given the time constraints, they must have done it on a golf course. But yes, it in a sense was symbolic of the formal talks that happened at the Hyderabad house in the first part of the day until the afternoon before lunchtime, and now taking this ride of the golf cart, the battery-operated golf cart, around the Akshardham temple, circumambulating that, and I think the whole architecture marvel of a temple which represents the 10,000 years of glorious history of the wonder that India is, from Vedic times to modern India, in itself is, I'm sure, it will have leave a very lasting impression on Prime Minister Turnbull, and is symbolic in many ways of what the two countries formally pledged to achieve.
Yes, Amrit, so we have both the Prime Ministers talking to each other and the Australian Prime Minister. Indeed, what is to be noticed is this expression of his, very curiously, full of curiosity. He saw the life-size figures there. He was apprised by the priest there at the Akshardham temple, and we see both the leaders there with earnestly hearing what the priest is saying. And I'm sure this receptive temperament of the Australian Prime Minister is indeed applaudable, isn't it, Amrit?
Oh yes, and what he sees, though it is 10,000 years of Indian history, but the way it is depicted is through the latest use of technology. 15 3D dioramas which make use of state-of-the-art robotics, fiber optics, light and sound effects, dialogues, music, all this lighting. It's using the latest technology to bring alive and bring a culture, to make the person go through a cultural experience. And that is what he's gone through. So he's seen India in its various facets as it exists today. India with a glorious past, an India which looks forward to future with hope, with ambitious targets, with the energy required to achieve it, with the motivation required to achieve it, with the aspiration to become a truly global player and a responsible player, not just at the level of, say, the Prime Minister, but at the level of the common citizen, of the level of the middle-class Indians who want to access best education from the best universities of the world, who want to, an India which is ready to partner in nanotechnology, say, when Terry, what the Prime Minister inaugurated today in Gurugram, though they remotely did it from the Hyderabad house in the heart of New Delhi, India ready to take on the challenges of tomorrow.
Yes, Amrita, as we speak here, we have the musical fountain at the Akshardham temple. It is one of another marvels of the Akshardham complex. As we told our viewers, we have the exhibits there, Hall of Values, a theatre. We just a while back saw both the leaders take a boat ride, and now they are witnessing the musical fountain at the Akshardham temple. Another extravaganza to the eyes there, a musical fountain at the Akshardham temple. Yagna Purush Kund is what it is called at Akshardham, and it is India's largest step well. Another architectural marvel there. It features a very large series of steps down to the Yagna Kund. We have the magnificence of the musical fountain there with Jaya Hey playing in the background. The fountain is a huge structure there. It measures almost 300 feet by 300 feet. It has got 2,870 steps. And what's also astounding to know is that it houses as many as 108 shrines. Another marvel there at the Akshardham temple. We have the Indian Prime Minister playing a perfect host there to the Australian dignitary, to his companion of the day, visiting Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull at the Akshardham temple. We also have a priest who time and again has been apprising both the leaders of each and every marvel that comes their way at the Akshardham temple. Earlier we saw them at the Hall of Values, then we saw them take a boat ride, we saw them inspect the architectural marvels through the central, which were depicted on the central dome there within the premises of the temple. And now just a while back we saw them witness the beautiful musical fountain at the Akshardham temple. They are atop the battery operated golf cart in the Akshardham temple in the national capital. Australian Prime Minister also in the afternoon took a metro ride starting from Mandiya's metro station to Akshardham temple in the national capital, and they've alighted from the golf cart, and again we see the priest apprising them at the Akshardham temple. What is to be here? We have the Australian Prime Minister right on the visitors book there, and I'm sure he will pen down very nicely the beautiful experience he's had at the Akshardham temple, and look at the smile he has on his face. And we also have the Indian Prime Minister playing the perfect host for the afternoon to the Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. We see the visiting dignitary on his first visit to India. He is here on a 4-day state visit, and he had an eventful day. Both the countries signed 6 MOUs in the afternoon, and then the Prime Minister took the Australian Prime Minister for a rendezvous at the Akshardham temple. He showed the Australian Prime Minister the overwhelming sentiment the countrymen have for their leader, the Prime Minister of the country, when the Australian Prime Minister witnessed the overwhelming response of the commuters at the Delhi Metro. Then we also saw the Australian Prime Minister click a selfie with the Indian Prime Minister. The camaraderie, the bonhomie between the two leaders was rather striking, and that indeed caught the attention of many and all. We have both the leaders being photographed by the media accompanying them, and the priest again apprising the visiting dignitary there. Both the leaders have penned down their thoughts in the visitors' book. at the Akshardham temple in the national capital. Australian Prime Minister received a souvenir from the Indian Prime Minister there. Beautiful experience, beautiful memories he will take from the Akshardham temple, which is symbolic of the culture, traditional Hindu and Indian culture, in fact, spirituality, architecture. A boat ride that took him through 10,000 years of Indian culture and history. And indeed, through his smile, through the expressions on his face, we can gauge how satisfying and how enlightening the experience has been for the visiting dignitary. Here we have him receiving the souvenirs, the token of love from the Akshardham temple authorities. Six MOUs had been signed between both the nations, and in detail we talked of how important has been the relationship for both the countries and how both the leaders today took the relationship to a new level. All right, our correspondent Amritpal Singh is joining us. Amrit, so we have the Australian Prime Minister pen down his thoughts on the visitors' book, and that culminates a very important rendezvous at the Akshardham temple, which is indeed symbolic of the Indian culture, spirituality and everything. And I'm sure as he leaves the premises, the Australian Prime Minister would indeed take memories with him that will last for long and long, isn't it?
Oh, yes, his face says it all. You see it on his face, you know. It's been quite an experience for him. And the way he went around the whole temple, took off his shoes, walked up the steps, how the priest explained him, the significance of each deity, of the various murtis there, the statues there, so the idols there.